If this is your first time here and you want to learn audio production, mixing or mastering, start by subscribing and clicking the bell button. Hey there, I'm Adrian from adrianmilea.com and today I'm going to test Oxford limiter from Sonnox. But first, if you want to improve your mixes and masters in less than 10 minutes, go ahead and download your cheat sheet here. In the meantime, I'm going to play some marvelous intro. So let's start by the overview of the limiter. The first thing you notice is that Sonnox limiter has three main sections: input, preprocess and output. In the input section, there's the input metering, which you can use to see the levels of your audio material entering the limiter. Next, we have the threshold with which you set the ceiling of your limiter. And just a heads up, if you're using multiple limiters, some of them call this parameter ceiling or output, so be aware of this. The bottom line is, with the threshold parameter you put the cap or the ceiling over which, technically speaking, the peaks or true peaks should not go over. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move on. So we spoke about threshold, which you can control here, or you can do it here, and here. Then with this fader you can inject more gain into the limiter in case you want louder masters, or you can take out some gain in case your audio material is too hot. But just a piece of advice, if your audio material is too hot at the input stage of your limiter, you should address the gain staging in your mastering chain before entering the limiter. So this was the input section. The next section is the preprocess section, where you can customize the attack, the release and the softness of the limiter. With the auto gain parameter, we are informed that we can engage an additional long-term gain loudness scaling process in order to accommodate wider program ranges. By the way, if you need detailed information about Oxford limiter, I highly recommend you to read its manual. You'll discover some interesting things there. Like for example, I found out that the auto gain parameter can be used in order to compensate for large level changes. And this is a great option to have because in some of my previous tests I found out that some limiters do change softer parts of mixes in unwanted ways in relation to louder parts. I'll speak more about this later in this video. But for now, one thing to keep in mind is that according to the manual of Oxford limiter, you may want to keep the auto gain on in majority of cases. Then here we have the gain reduction meter, where we can see how much gain reduction the Oxford limiter is applying to the audio material, or in other words, this meter shows how much limiting is applied. And this was the preprocess section of the Oxford limiter. Okay, let's move on to the output section. Now, this is an interesting feature. In the output section of Oxford limiter, there is the enhance section, with which, according to the manual, you can improve the loudness and the presence of the program material by modifying the dynamic and harmonic content of the signal. And there are two modes that you can choose from. The first mode is the normal mode, which you can activate by deactivating the safe mode here. We're informed that in normal mode, full sample value limiting occurs at 100% or higher. You can customize the percentage of the enhance fader here. And the second mode is the safe mode. When safe mode is engaged, sample value limiting occurs throughout the range, that is from 0% up to 135%. And with this enhance fader, you can control the degree of dynamic loudness boost. As you noticed, in case you need some more information on different parameters, just hover over them. Plus, if you need some extra loudness, you should definitely try this enhance feature. Then here, we have the output trim parameter, with which you can adjust the output of the limiter. And here you can activate this recon meter in order to see overloads like true peaks. And we're informed that to correct overloads in a reconstructed material, we should enable the AutoCamp feature, which it seems that engages an additional processing stage which dynamically corrects true peaks. Personally, I'm a fan of taking care of true peaks, so this option is definitely for me. Then, if you want to hold the peaks on your output meter, you should engage this peak hold button. And here we have the dither section, where you can choose between a 24 or 16-bit dither, or you can opt for no dither. Then here you can choose between different types of dither and depth. And that's pretty much it in terms of the overview of the Oxford limiter from Sonnox. If you want more information on it, I highly recommend you to read its manual, because you will find interesting information there. And this is the overview of the Oxford limiter. Now it's time to see and hear how this limiter sounds. Here I have a song produced and mixed by my brother Vlad. This song was used in other previous limiter tests, so if you're coming back, you might be familiar with this song. And this is pretty much why I'm using this song, because after so many limiter tests with the same song, this makes it very easy for me to hear if a limiter sounds good or not. To give you some context, I'm going to test Oxford limiter against the TC Electronics Brico limiter, the power core version, which by the way is my favorite limiter. Also, I will test it against Pro L2 from Fabfilter, which in my opinion is another very good limiter. So for this test, I set the threshold to -1 dBFS, like I usually do in my mastering sessions, and I match the limiters as much as possible in terms of loudness in the loudest parts of the song. The attack and release are pretty fast. I didn't touch the enhance feature and I activated the auto comp in order to take care of true peaks. Also, there is no dither. So let's listen to how Oxford limiter sounds. From the very beginning, it seems to me that compared to the Brico limiter, the Oxford limiter loses some of the 3D space of the mix. When I'm referring to the 3D space of the mix, I'm referring mostly to its depth and element separation, and well, how the mix sits in space. So it seems to me that some of the separation of the elements of the mix is lost when using Oxford limiter. But let's listen some more to the next section and hear if this is actually the case. Now let's start with the cool part. I like that in this pretty loud and crowded section, the Oxford limiter doesn't distort, as other limiters did in some of my previous tests. So the Oxford limiter keeps the mix together with no distortion. The low end and the mids sound pretty good. However, I also hear some loss of the sparkle at the top end. The vocals in the Oxford limiter version sound just a bit more digital, but also lose some of their space in the mix, which is not very big to begin with. On the other hand, the Brico limiter keeps the 3D space of the mix in its place, and also the separation of the elements of the mix. So Brico limiter keeps the vocals more natural and also their space in a crowded section, plus the sparkle and the quality of the top end of the mix is kept. Now, let's test another section. In this section, the Oxford limiter keeps the punch of the mix, and there's no distortion even if we hit about -9 LUFS. But I still feel that some of the 3D space of the mix is lost, and some of the top end quality, and that is compared with the Brico limiter from TC Electronic. Now, at this point I really want to hear how Oxford limiter compares against Pro L2 from Fabfilter, so let's hear it. In my opinion, in this section both limiters sound pretty good, but the Oxford limiter tightens a bit the stereo image, while Pro L2 keeps more of the top-end quality and mix separation. And now, the next section of the song is a softer section, and I already mentioned in this video that some of the limiters I tested affect softer parts of mixes in unwanted ways, making them louder than they should. So let's see if this is also the case with Oxford limiter. When I use brick wall in this section, I achieve about -13.8 LUFS. And when I use Oxford limiter, the loudness is almost the same, so that tells me that the limiter behaves as it should. Now let's see how Oxford limiter handles true peaks. As I mentioned, for this test I used a -1 dBFS threshold or ceiling, plus I activated the auto cam feature in order to take care of true peaks. And when I play the master, using the loudness meter from TC Electronic, we can see that true peaks reach a level of -0.7 dBFS. So, in case I would need a -1 dBFS true peak level, I might want to increase the threshold a bit. And this was some of my testing of the Oxford limiter from Sonnox. Now it's time for some conclusions. This was another video where I continued my quest of finding the best tools for audio mastering, and we only talked about one of the crucial tools you need for audio mastering, and that is a limiter. But if you want to learn more about other tools you need and how to use them so that you can finally make your audio production sound professional, check out my Pro Audio Mastering program, where I'll show you step by step how to master audio, be it your production or the one you receive from your clients. So if you're interested in upgrading your mastering skills, get your copy of Pro Audio Mastering and I'll see you on the other side. Now getting back to the Oxford limiter, in my opinion, this plugin is a good sounding limiter. It doesn't distort at hot levels, it makes the lows and mids sound pretty smooth, but when it comes to the top end, I feel that it loses some sparkle and overall quality. Also, I noticed that compared to the brick wall limiter, the power core version from TC Electronic and Pro L2 from Fabfilter, the Oxford limiter loses some of the 3D space and the separation of the mix elements. And it also tightens the stereo image a bit. But this is only what I found from my tests. What I feel is that Oxford limiter would need some oversampling feature, like it is the case with both brick wall limiter, the power core version, and Pro L2. In my opinion, that could improve the quality of its sound. And I'm saying this because I felt something similar when I was testing a couple of episodes ago the Invisible Limiter G2 from AOM Audio. By the way, you should check that episode in case you're considering the Invisible Limiter G2. Again, this is only what I found from my tests. Now, tell me your opinion. Which limiter did you like most from this test? Which is your favorite limiter that you're using in your mastering sessions? Comment below and share with me some of other great limiters I should test. Hit that subscribe button for more videos like this and help me grow this channel. Until next time, stay cool and make great music.